I've been a fan of Rockstar video games my entire life, and being a fan of them means I know what they look like when they're at their absolute peak. And, those single player experiences that would shatter all expectations and break your brain, that would move the industry forward, time in and time out. A world that was so alive, a story so human that you're still thinking about this game years and years later down the road. And then really something started to change for me with Rockstar. And again, I haven't lost faith in what Rockstar is or what they are now, but I did start to feel the distance between who they were and who they were becoming after GTA 5. And I think a lot of you have felt this shift as well. So let's talk about it. So again, when I think about Rockstar Games, I think about them at their absolute peak for me personally, and two moments come to mind. The first is the three-leaf clover bank heist in GTA 4. If you know exactly what we're talking about here. That mission is just pure cinema. The tension, the chaos, the way it escalates. There's nothing else in gaming that has consistently delivered the level of set piece storytelling the way that Rockstar Games does. Nobody matches them. And the second for me is John Marston crossing into Mexico for the first time in Red Dead Redemption. If you've played that game, you know exactly how cinematic that moment is in the story, the music swelling, the landscape opening up. You just feel that's just something that a lot of games can never replicate. And it makes you feel like you're just witnessing something, I don't know, cinematic and on a different scale that you just haven't seen. And those moments, they didn't happen by accident. They happened because a studio was pouring everything it had into the player experience, not the shareholder report, not the quarterly revenue target, but the single player experience. And that's the Rockstar I grew up with. That's the Rockstar I fell in love with. And for a long time through GTA 4, Red Dead Redemption, that's exactly who they were for me. And let me tell you what Rockstar at their peak actually looked like in practice. Again, GTA 4 came out and delivered one of the most human stories the franchise had ever told, with Nico Bellic trying to escape his past in a city that kept dragging him back in. And that alone, that could have been enough. But Rockstar, they didn't stop with the GTA 4 story alone. They came back with the tremendous episodes of Liberty City, The Ballad of Gay Tony, The Lost and Damned, two fully realized standalone stories that interconnected with the main game in interesting ways that felt intentional, earned, and not bolted on. Again, The Lost and Damned hit differently because back then the Sons of Anarchy show was still running and the biker culture was kind of embedded in the cultural conversation at that time. And it felt timely and personal and completely in its own thing. Again, for me, you could package those two DLCs alone and you probably have a Game of the Year contender in my eyes. That's how good those DLCs were for GTA 4. And then following that, well, you got the tremendous masterpiece Red Dead Redemption. Came out and they did it all over again. One of the greatest stories ever told in the gaming medium. John Marston's story of family, sacrifice, a man caught between who he was and who he's trying to become. And how did Rockstar follow that masterpiece of a game? With a DLC that none of us saw coming, Undead Nightmare, a zombie apocalypse DLC set in the same world that somehow impossibly fit perfectly. It wasn't a gimmick. It was a 12+ hour standalone experience with its own mechanics, tone, and stakes. Again, the four horses of the apocalypse, y'all, the creeping dread of that Western world falling apart around our characters. It just gave you that creep factor you didn't know you needed in a Red Dead game. And in my opinion, it stands as one of the greatest pieces of DLC ever made in gaming history. Full stop. And again, that's Rockstar clicking on every cylinder. That is a studio that finishes their games and then asks, well, how do we give our players even more? And then GTA 5 came out and it was a masterful game. Yet again, a genuinely great single player story, pushing the boundaries now with 3 protagonists and ambition, very ambitious structure, a world that pushed everything forward technically. So I'm not here to knock on how great GTA 5 is, but GTA Online was bigger than anybody ever could have anticipated or expected, bigger than even Rockstar was expecting. And within a couple of years, they planned a single player DLC, and it reportedly was going to include the return of Liberty City, and it got quietly shelved. The resources pivoted, and everything went full steam ahead for GTA Online. And again, following that was Red Dead Redemption 2, following the same pattern, one of the greatest stories ever told in gaming with Arthur Morgan's arc. It's so good that it's really peak for me in gaming. But again, after launch, all the resources and attention tried to go towards Red Dead Online, and really they went into GTA Online, and the content just dried up and the single player world sat there pretty well untouched. Again, would I have loved to see another Undead Nightmare? Yes, but that never came to fruition. And now GTA Online has, of course, and Grand Theft Auto and Rockstar have their paid subscription services, which I do not begrudge them for 1 second. Again, if millions of players are paying and playing your game every single day, you'd be leaving money on the table and not to monetize it. It'd be a bad business decision, but it tells you something about where the center of gravity has shifted for the studio and the company. So here's the thing I keep coming back to. I don't think this is a Rockstar issue or story. This is a human story. What happens to a creative person, a studio, an artist, a company, when money starts driving the vision instead of the vision driving the money? Again, I grew up back playing the sports games, Madden, NBA 2K. I remember when those games were about the games. They were about franchise. They were about all those things that made those games great. But now look at them. They're a shadow of their former selves. They're now about Ultimate Team, My Team, premium currencies, battle passes, seasonal modes. The gameplay is almost secondary to the ecosystem built around extracting money from the people who love the sport. It's not a gaming issue, it's a human problem at its core. It's what happens when something beloved becomes a product to be optimized. And here's the uncomfortable truth that I think we all have to sit with. We own some of this problem. We are part of the issue. Again, if we didn't spend our money on all these cosmetics, shark cards, or whatever comes next, the model, this live service ecosystem, it dies. But we did, and we do spend our money, billions of dollars worth. And by doing that, we tell every publisher, not just Rockstar, every publisher and studio in the industry exactly where the revenue lies. We've created the incentive, and now we live inside the world that incentive has built. And again, I don't think this is a Take-Two Interactive villain story or anything of that nature. I think they made a good business decision that any corporation would have done when they saw those numbers that GTA Online was pulling in. But again, business decisions and artistic decisions, they're not the same thing. And when a studio built on artistic vision starts primarily making decisions based on business practices, you do feel that shift. Maybe not in quality of what gets released, but it does hit you basically on what doesn't get released. And the DLCs of the past that never come now in the future. And the single player worlds that never get added onto or expanded. And the silence where another Undead Nightmare should have and maybe could have been. That silence is what I've been sitting with now for the last decade. So where does that leave us now as we head to GTA 6? Again, I'm not expecting Rockstar to go back to exactly who they were prior to GTA 5. I know that GTA Online is going to be even bigger and more ambitious than anything they've ever built before. And I'm not going to pretend that that doesn't come with some trade-offs for the single player experience in some aspects. But here's what I'm watching for, that Cyberpunk 2077 moment where, of course, we know that game was a disaster at launch, but CD Projekt Red spent years rebuilding trust, and then they released the remarkable Phantom Liberty single player expansion that reminded everyone who and what that studio was and is capable of when they poured everything into an experience rather than a transaction. And again, it was celebrated, it mattered, it restored faith. That path exists for Rockstar. Not that Rockstar has a bad reputation or a bad rap, but again, if they use GTA Online to generate all this revenue and then they funnel that back, at least some of it back, into story expansions maybe a couple years down the road, that again breaks the gaming world all over again, not because they have to, but because that's who they are and that's what they do. Again, my message to Rockstar, it's simple: keep making experiences for single player fans who show up because of who you are. Keep pouring your hearts and souls into these worlds, these characters, these stories, and the innovation in the medium. Don't fall into the traps. They've swallowed up so many studios and companies before you. Again, Rockstar, y'all have earned the right to take your time and to do things your way. So use it. Because here's what I land on after all of this. I've never stopped believing in Rockstar Games, and I never will. They've never stopped delivering great single player worlds. They've never stopped pushing what gaming can be. And I believe GTA 6 is going to remind a lot of people, maybe even including that studio themselves, what gaming is possible of and what is capable of doing when they push the boundaries forward in every aspect. So again, that's what this channel's here for, y'all, to sit in the space between what gaming was and what it can be again. And I believe stubbornly, I'm faithfully expecting that this game is going to be one of the biggest and best games of all time. So thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'm GoBotch. This is Between Lives. God bless to you and your families, and we'll see you back here in the next one.